So the second learning objective is to explain how accounts, debits, and credit are used to record a transaction. So first, I want to introduce something called a T account. Okay, T account. So you know T account like T-shirt, right? You have a horizontal line, and in the middle you also have a vertical line. So that two lines kind of meet at the top, which create a T letter shape, right? T account. This is called a T account, right? It has three parts. The first one is on top of the horizontal line, you are writing the title of the account. Okay, so the title of the account will be right above that horizontal line. And then you have a vertical line that is going to divide the space between the horizontal line into two parts, the left side and the right side. Okay, so we define the left side is called debit side. The right side is called credit side. Why? This is just how we define things, right? So in the world, right, there are all kinds of different opposite things, right? You have left, right, male, female, up and down, front, back, right? You have positive, negative. You have warm, cold, right? So it's just the way how in our life we define things. We have debit, we have credit. So for the T account, the left side, we call it the left or debit side. And then on the right side, we call it credit side, okay? So it looks like a T shape, so we call this T account, okay? T account. Okay, so debit and credit. This debit and credit tells us where the entries should be made, right? Should that be made on the left side of the T account or should be on the right side of the T account? Okay. If I'm saying debiting, that means I'm going to put a number on the left side of the T account. If I say crediting, then you enter the amount to the right side. When I was a student, my professor he was very funny. He was saying, what if you don't know where to put it? So if you know it's the left side, you debit. If you know it's the right side, you credit, right? What if you don't know? And so he told me that it's called credit. So credit. So it's a combination of that two word. Let me write it down. So credit. Okay, credit. So it's funny. If you don't know, hopefully you know where to put it. Okay. If the debit by amount exceeds credit amount, the account has a debit balance. Oh, thank you, Rev Deep. I appreciate your comment. Yeah, Rev Deep sent me a message saying it's funny because otherwise I feel awkward. I'm trying to tell a joke, but I don't receive any response. Maybe me telling the joke on its own is a joke. Okay, so basically we are saying that don't worry, you laughed. Okay, good. Okay, I'm glad you laughed. Okay, so I'm going to draw a picture. So this is one line. This is one line. Okay, so should I do this? Just need a line here. Okay. So suppose this is a cash account, right? This is a cash account. Okay. If I debit the cash, right? Let's say I first debit the cash. I debit $100, right? So which side I should put it if I debit the cash? And left side 100. And then what does this mean? This means my cash balance increased 100. And then I also, in another entry, I also do a credit 50. Okay. So what does that tell me? My cash balance decreased 50, right? So For the 100, I received $100. For the $50, I used the $50. Okay, so now my debit is more than my credit. Okay, so which side is greater? This side is left side is greater, right? So if I calculate net balance, right, I should get $50, right? I should get $50. 100 minus 50. So this tells me that I still have $50 on hand, right? Because I received $100, I debit 100, I used $50, I credit $50. So what's remaining in my hand is still a debit balance, $50. I still have $50. Okay, so then we say this account has a debit balance of $50, right? So then what if it's 150, right? Then if you collected $100, but you used the 150, right? So then you would have a credit balance, right? You would have a credit balance, $50. That means you are actually, you don't have you don't have any cash on hand. Instead, you owe the bank $50, right? You are at the negative position, right? You are in the negative position. So in this case, your cash will have a credit balance, right? So does this make sense? If it makes sense, give me a sum up. 1, 2, 3. Give me a sum up. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so this is my first slide to explain debit and credit. Okay. If the net balance is on the left side, okay, then we say this have a debit balance. If the net balance, the net number is on the right side, we say this account has a credit balance. Okay, so then when we define normal balance, right? When we define the normal balance, this one is very interesting. I'm going to go back to the previous this one, and I'm gonna pull this equation. This equation I just derived. Okay, this is my equation. We worked together and we know this equation, right? Okay, so tell me what is on the left side. So on my equation, what is on the left side of that equation? What on my left side? Let's see. No, nobody said anything. I said yes. So I said is on my left side. What else? Expenses and dividend, right? These are the accounts on my left side of the equation. Okay. And what are the accounts on my right side of the equation? So you have liabilities, common shares, and revenue, right? Revenue. Okay. So now it's interesting, right? Left and right. Okay. So what if we define the normal balance? This one's all debit. And this one's all credit. So we're talking about the normal balance. Normally, these accounts should have a debit balance. And normally, this account should have a credit balance. Okay? So what does that mean? That means if I increase the asset account, I will debit. Okay? If I increase the revenue account, I'm going to credit, right? To keep them that balance. Okay, so let's take a look. For asset account, because it has a debit normal balance. So when you increase asset, you debit asset. When you decrease asset, you credit asset. Does this make sense? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Give me a sum up if it makes sense. Okay, awesome. Now, for liability, it's the opposite, right? For liability, it's the opposite. Because liability would have a normal credit balance, right? Liability would have a normal credit balance because it's on the right side of the equation, right? So now if I need to increase my liability, I need to credit my liability. If I need to decrease my liability, I will debit my liability. So the point is, for each entry, when I debit and credit for the same amount, my equation is always balanced. Okay? So think about this, right? Because the left side is the debit, the right side is credit. For each entry, when I debit and credit for the same amount, my equation should be always balanced, right? Okay, does this make sense, guys? 1, 2, 3. Give me a thumb up. Okay, good. Okay, so now, can anyone tell me what about expenses? What about common shares? What about the revenue? What about the dividend declared? Okay, so this is the liability. This is the asset. So now let's take a look at the common shares return earning. So these guys should be the same because they're on the right side, right? So these guys should be the same. So common shares is on the right side. Return earnings is on the right side, right? So if you need to increase this to account, you have to credit. If you need to decrease that to account, you need a debit. Yes, very good. So students are responding to my questions by sending me direct message. So this is a message I'm able to see, but you guys will not be able to see. Okay. So good job. Yeah. And now think about this revenue, dividend. So dividend would be on this side, right? The dividend would be like this. And revenue and expenses, this one has to be breaked. Right? Revenue and expenses. So I have to break this one. Revenue, expenses. So my expenses should be on this side. My revenue is on this side, right? So basically, this is how you know, right? What is your normal balance? So for I side, dividend declared and the expenses account, your normal balance is the debit balance. If you need to increase these accounts, you have to debit. If you need to decrease this account, you have to credit. Okay. For liability, common shares, return earnings, and revenue, they have a normal balance. They have a normal credit balance. If you need to increase these accounts, you need to credit these accounts. If you need to decrease this account, then you debit this account, right? Why they are opposite? Because these accounts are at the two sides of the equation. And every time I debit credit in my journal entry, I have to debit and credit for the same amount in order to keep that equation balanced. Yes, we are going to use these rules for the journal entries. Does this make sense? So give me a sum up if it makes sense. 1, 2, 3. Awesome, awesome, good. Okay, so now this is the ones we have talked about. And this is just another way to show the normal balance, right? So asset have a debit normal balance, liability have a credit normal balance, common shares have a normal credit balance, return earnings have a normal credit balance, revenue have a normal credit balance, expenses and the dividend have a normal debit expenses. You have a question about the shares? Yeah, ask me your question. What is your question? So shares is on the right side of the equation. So they have a normal debt credit balance. If you increase your shares, you need credit shares. Okay. Do we have any question on this? That's increase in the value of redeemed shares a loss for the company or for profit. Okay, so if your value increased, okay, if the value of the shares increased, if you redeem it, you buy the share back, you're going to pay more money than you originally received to redeem the share. So therefore, it's going to be a loss position. So you're going to debit your contributed surplus. If we repurchase shares, then if you repurchase share, you buy the shares back. So the shares balance will decrease. So because shares have a common credit balance, to decrease it, you have to debit common shares. Okay, awesome. So Randeep is asking me a question. Okay. Okay, anyone else have a question? No? Okay. So learning objective number 3, journalize transactions in general journal. Okay. So basically, you would use the source document, right? So this can be the sales receipts, invoices, right? And this will be the evidence of the transaction, right? Because otherwise, people always thinking accountant are very creative. They are cooking books, right? They made up numbers. So, and that's why we have auditors, right? They are doing the auditing work to make sure everything is appropriate. So when the auditor, they are doing the audit work, they would rely on evidence, right? So one of those evidence would be source document. If you say you paid for something, then show me that invoice, right? If you say you make some income, you made some sales, then show me the sales receipts. If you say you hired 4 people, then show me their payroll slips, right? So the source document would be the evidence for those transactions. And then when you see each transaction, you analyze them, you're going to be able to say, oh, okay, I'm going to make an entry. Should I debit or credit? Which account for how much, right? So when you entering this transaction data, this is known as journalizing, okay? So the 3 purpose of journalizing would be disclose the complete effect of a transaction in one place, include a brief explanation of the transaction. So not only you say on this date, I debit this account, I credit this account. It's also good to include a brief explanation what happened, right? Because otherwise, how do I know you have done the correct job, the correct journal entry? Okay. If you tell me what happened, what is that transaction event? Okay, just using words description, and then you have the debit credit. Okay. Provide a chronological record of the transactions. You start with the first day, right? And then following the order, right? You don't you don't do it like everywhere, right? So in that journal, right? In that journal, you go from the earliest dates and followed by the latest dates, right? When are you going to take attendance? I don't. I don't. Okay, and helps to prevent and locate errors, right? So once you have everything in that general journal, it helps, right? Helps to prevent locate errors. So this is my second, and this is my second and the third learning objective. So I need to stop